Hi everybody, we're going to be working on notes today from the 7th grade Common Core lesson 3.4. We're going to be solving equations using multiplication and division. The goal of solving the equations is to isolate the variable. In the first example, we're going to go ahead and look at algebra tiles to figure out what is the equation we're trying to go ahead and model. So on this side, I have 12 negatives. On the other side of the equal sign, I have 3 x's. So the equation that's being modeled is negative 12 equals 3x. Because the goal is to isolate variables, I need to figure out how much 1x represents. I can do that by grouping. I literally go ahead and divide up my 12 negatives, and each of the x's is represented by negative 4. Grouping and division is the same thing. So I literally go ahead and circle to tell me that the value of 1x is equal to negative 4. In the other 3 examples, we're going to be using algebra to solve for the variable. In example 2, I have x divided by 3 is equal to negative 4/5. I need to isolate the variable. I need to identify what's happening to the variable right now. Right now, the variable is being divided by 3. And in order to eliminate dividing by 3, I do the opposite operation of multiplying by 3. I can use a dot or a parentheses, and I multiply both sides by 3. 3 times x divided by 3 really equals 3x divided by 3. I can put a 1 here if I'd like. And 3x divided by 3 is just an x, because 3 divided by 3 is 1. So this simplifies away. I then can do my math as negative 12 over 5, because negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, and 5 times 1 is 5. So the value of x is equal to negative 12/5. I can also write it as negative 2 and 2/5. I've identified what's happening to the variable divided by 3. I then do the opposite operation to get rid of the divide by 3, so I multiply both sides. I then go ahead and do my computation in terms of multiplying by fractions, and I get a value for x. I can take either one of these values and plug them into the original equation. So I can take negative 12/5 divided by 3, and if I've done everything correctly, I should get negative 4/5. In example 2, I'm going to isolate the variable, but I need to identify what's happening to the variable right away. There is a negative 4/10 next to the y. The negative 4/10 is the coefficient. Because it's next to a variable, it means multiplication. So I have 18 is equal to negative 4/10 y, where y is being multiplied by negative 4/10. In order to eliminate that negative 4/10, I do the opposite operation. And the opposite operation of multiplication is division. So I'm going to indicate division by using a fraction symbol of division, line underneath. I then go ahead and I have negative 4/10 y divided by negative 4/10. Those cancel out to 1, so I'm just left with a y on that side. I now need to do the computation of 18 divided by negative 4/10. Some of you may be able to do that. Some of you can't. If you can't, and we're going to have that with rational numbers, you're going to have to do the problem off to the side. So I have 18 divided by 4/10. I can't divide with a divisor that's a decimal, so I create an equivalent expression, which is 4 goes into 180. When I do that math, I end up getting 45. So y is equal to negative 45. I include a negative because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. I can again take that value of negative 45, evaluate it by multiplying it by negative 4/10, and I should be getting 18 if I've done my computation correctly. In the last example, I'm isolating the variable, but I also need to identify what's happening with the variable on that side. So right now I have a negative 3/8 times x because they're next to each other. The negative 3/8 is the coefficient next to the variable x. Now, they're being multiplied, so I divide in order to eliminate it being next to the x. This is the one problem where you actually have to think about what you're doing. Some kids are going to do this and divide by negative 3/8, negative 3/8. But let's think about that. How do I divide by a fraction? I multiply by the reciprocal. So what I'm going to do is multiply both sides by -8/3. Those cancel out because they're reciprocals. I'm left with x on this side, and I'm left with 40/3 on the other side. I can keep it 40/3 or 39 1/3. Whenever you're solving equations, you need to isolate the variable, but don't forget to figure out what's happening first so you know what operation to do. Make sure you stop and pause or watch it through and then take notes or vice versa. Thanks, and have a good one.